governments on the privatization aspect. Take the initiative. It may not succeed. They may initially respond unfairly, cynically, that the ad industry is looking for business. I think as a trustee, as a karma yogi, one must go through this bit of misunderstanding. Eventually, when we deliver the results, people will understand. At the professional level, what kind of actions are possible? Each professional can enrich the agency's process of vision formulation. Many managements may invite your participation. Very often we are too busy with the current operational tactical things and do not invest enough time. We don't deploy our full creativity at that point. If for some reason the management is not following an open process, you can very gently suggest and influence that a participative approach would lead to a better vision and strategy. Bring in a great deal of enthusiasm, not just motivation. That's a weak word. Motivation is externally driven. It is bought through compensation packages. Enthusiasm is something that springs from within the professional. There is a great deal of debate today, nowadays, about compensation packages, salaries, allowances, stock options. Of course, these are necessary. But I think the key principle of success, leadership, our own philosophy, is that if somebody invests upfront in contribution, the rewards cannot but come to that person, to that firm. Embrace the changes rather than coast along and reluctantly go along with them. Advocate vision and transformation to other professionals, other colleagues within the firm, people outside. Often it is a silent majority which is guilty in allowing a few to obstruct changes. Help the Indian ad industry with its vision achievement, that is going beyond one's own role and firm, sparing some extra energy, horsepower to help one's profession. By being a learner personally as well as a coach to the next generation of younger ad professionals. Now the clients, to the extent there are users here and maybe readers later on, I think clients have not exploited fully the potential of the advertising profession for marketing, superior business strategy and communication. Build a strategic partnership with the agency. This frequent tendering, uncertainty which is created, maybe over a long period of time, renewal may be useful, but more a collective partnership and a shared vision. And while advertising may raise expectations in the minds of the consumer, very often the client firm may not be doing enough to improve the delivery capability, to make the great ad also credible. Creativity can bring in lovely ads, but at some point of time it turns sour if the firm doesn't deliver. For the consumer, as a fellow consumer, as a fellow citizen, my suggestion would be to strike a balance. There are people who are, from their viscerals, against advertising. For years they have held this ideology and they cannot find anything to believe in advertising. They are not just skeptical but downright cynical. At the same time, there are some who totally swallow whatever is in ad. So the consumer must strike a balance between these two extremes. Very big challenge for the younger generation. Small families, one child, two child, what the Chinese call the emperor generation. Pocket money at school, plenty of comfort later in life, not knowing what to do with the purchasing power, and could be self-destructive and not achieve optimal life satisfaction. So they need to strike a balance between saving and consumption, and in consumption, the mix of consumption between a variety of competing products in terms of their relevance, their wholesomeness, their impact on their physical, mental, spiritual health. People also, the consumers also need to speak up and give feedback to agencies and client firms. You must have seen this recent campaign in the US by some NGOs whereby some firms like Sears and Quakers have withdrawn their ad for the Temptation Island serial on the TV, which talks about, advocates almost the concept of infidelity and the breaking of families, and there has been campaign against tobacco and other kinds of advertising. Just like ethical investor looking at labor practices, they also look at technology, environment, and advertising practices of firms. Other things being equal by Indians, this historical craze for foreign, anything imported, even spurious labels, the Indian consumer needs to become more mature. Certainly, of course, there are superior value products that need to be looked at. As a citizen, be a positive force for the economic reform and for the India vision. So what I have done in this lecture is to try to look at the macro changes of economic policy, technology, and the civil society, derive the implications for advertising, keeping in mind its power as well as its hazards, the media changes. I have proposed a mission for the profession and vision for the agency as well as the individual professionals. I have concluded with a set of ideas for action. I hope these are of interest to you. Once more, I'd like to thank the Foundation for the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and I look forward to any comments, questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for a most enlightening talk, and particularly for the clarity of your talk. The markers of history are vital. I think if you are not aware of your history, you do not have a future. But more important are the signals of the present and the future. And these are what you have highlighted. These are important not only for advertising, but for industry and for all of us. This is particularly so because change has a nasty habit of accelerating. And therefore, the need for vision, the professional vision which you referred to. So all that you have said is very timely and important and action-oriented. Thank you very much for your talk. May I now suggest that if anybody has any questions, the eminent speaker would be taking them on.
Society in the world is up against the arm against the Monsanto seed trials in Karnataka.
Yeah, I think your question is that what's the role of ethics?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'd just like you to re-examine one statement you made in passing. All advertisement is not unethical. There are many cases where the advertising provides very relevant information to the customer. Daily, as you look at the papers, magazines, people are looking for information on products to buy, services to avail of, housing loans, for example. There are some very wholesome advertisements that come out also. But as in any industry, there is a 5%, 10%, which is perhaps sharp practice, taking the customer for a ride. But in this particular case of Monsanto, biotech that you're talking about, there is in fact not just an ethical question at the company ad level, there is a global bioethics debate that's going on, as you know. In many countries, there is a reservation about the GE products, genetically engineered products, GM products. Europe and US are very divided on this question. US has already moved forward on GM products, therefore they feel that they have seen the benefits, there are no serious after effects. And quite realistically, their companies would benefit. Europe is more reserved. Therefore, in India, it is a question that government of India and NGOs together in various consultations should resolve. But when you look at the Indian Science Congress, the agricultural session there, speakers like M.S. Swaminathan and Kush, they feel that unless we apply some kind of ongoing biotechnology to cereal, cash, food, fruit and other crops, we may not be able to feed a population of 1.4 billion, 1.6 billion. So somewhere I think it is a combination of many of these things that need to be done. The ethics question may come in some of the other acts where it is attacking children, young minds, teenagers, giving them different kind of lifestyles, fantasies, products which they may not need. Yeah, so there is a question. But I think we should not tar the whole industry with that brush. What Dr. Manu Kulkarni illustrates is that the civil society is more ready to speak up than industry.
The underlying message that I get from your talk is that you are extremely optimistic about our, not only about our future, but for the future of the advertising industry. Is that a valid conclusion?
Yeah, well, certainly it is your perception, and for you it is very valid perception. And I take the view that in these things it is not a measurable objective reality like length or temperature or weight. Perceptions are important. I would just like to submit that I am positive. I believe this is possible. But I would not like to be wildly optimistic. We may not achieve this vision. We may not achieve the vision in the time frame that is possible. But sooner or later, we will get somewhere close to this vision. The plea that I am making is to do it more efficiently, more effectively, in a more organized manner, more professional manner. So I agree with you, there are many hazards, there are many steps in between. I've also talked about the problems, infrastructure, government, policy, various kinds of delays and difficulties, problems in privatization, transfer of resources. But the whole idea of liberalization is to share the responsibility between elected governments, civil service, business and society together. Who will transform this country? And I am in every such forum suggesting that let us take charge. Don't depend on a magic figure of a prime minister, a hero somewhere, any level, chief minister, or a chamber of commerce president. I think it is a collective task. A number of people have to share together. And 2 years ago, India emerged as the world's largest producer of milk and milk-based products. And I talked to a number of young audiences, and unlike the KBC, I cannot give them a crore or even a lakh, but I asked them some questions. I asked them, is there one person you think among others who is singularly responsible for this achievement of the country in the milk field? And sure enough, they all come up with Kurian, Dr. Kurian. So I would suggest on that pattern that there is one advertising professional perhaps in this hall today who will make that difference in this profession. I would like to see 10 unmarried. Maybe make a short-term sacrifice, but in the long run build an image as an agency that would raise not only your client relationship with you, but the public credibility of not just your firm, but raise the profession. Name Hakim Jan Katra. Few bad doctors lower the prestige of the medical profession. A few ambulance-chasing lawyers lower the image of the legal profession. So can agencies, by some action, demonstrate a value system? This we have seen on a macro level in Indian industry. Houses which before liberalization followed ethical practices have in fact benefited from the new opportunities of partnership, alliances and so on. And houses which used to ignore ethics pre-liberalization are now coming back to better corporate governance and practices because it is today necessary in the competitive environment. So rather than reinforcing some social weakness and using that as an alibi or a justification, can you work around it? And for example, promote some other worthy causes. I love to ask a number of young Indian audiences, how many classical dance forms are there in this country? Not only young, even older people cannot do. There are 7 classical dances in this country. And many of us adult Indians don't know, we cannot go beyond the 3rd one. Similarly, there are several forms of music. painting, architecture, design. So there are many things that need to be popularized, communicated. So can you set aside 1%, 2% of your budget, pocket budget, for this kind of a social cause advertising? Some thoughts that I'd like you to.
Recently I had the occasion of listening to Mr. Devang Mehta, and what caught my surprise there was that he was talking about, he says, internationally we are perceived, India is perceived as, and my mind were, make cameras and things. He said, as a technology nation, I don't think he was talking in IT forum. And I'm referring this line of my recall to your point about how the state is going to be perceived. You mentioned something like that. And about how, are you saying that state is going to be less important? I suddenly feel, and this is my feeling very, very preliminary, that I think all of a sudden people are trying to feel very proud about India, where we were almost thinking that we have adopted everything United. With sometimes, like the best example I can see is Domino's selling.
Two different questions is what you are asking.
Yes.
One is Devang Mehta's comment, do I agree that India is being seen as a technology nation? No, Universal Party answered it because he is in the IT field and maybe interacting with IT customers there. But I think the prevalent image of India for a long time, it is gradually changing. IT, pharma, they've had a role in this process. And also Indian academics, professionals, researchers. But the traditional image has been one of an agricultural, backward, elephants, snake charmers, fakirs, that kind of thing. It is not changed. Even in IT, there was a brutally frank interview of an Australian IT expert last year in Economic Times. And he was asked, what is your view of Indian IT? He said, I look upon India as a huge bank of codes. So even in software, if you look at the value chain and the value addition, the higher end of the software, we are not really on the, not yet. The interstate competition, Tidal Park 1 and 2, is in a way shifting part of the center of gravity of the IT industry to Chennai. Now Naidu is competing, Digvijay Singh wants to come into it, Goa wants to create a center. This is the role of government, create the infrastructure which can attract industry. And at the people's level, make sure that the absolute poverty is eliminated. 19% which we still have has to go. Compulsory primary education, elimination of child labor, full employment, health care, take care of an aging population. Deal with issues like the Kumbh Mela, where it's a fantastic event, but some families bring their aged mothers and conveniently lose them in their large crowds. So these are issues that government must deal with.
Yeah, my question is, why do you classify consumerism as one of the hazards or vices of our time?
It's not my personal idiosyncratic qualification. I'm saying that these are generally perceived hazards of advertising. Consumerism, anything beyond the point. For example, research shows that cameras, video, tape recorders. Now, various such consumer durables people buy and use them very infrequently, but they keep accumulating them. A German research showed that they use it 4 days in a year, and they don't have time to look at it. If you look at the number of albums, the wardrobe of people, there are many who don't have a few meters of cloth, but the wardrobe is bulging and you don't have time to upkeep and look after them. Now in the US it has gone to the point where there is a consumer dis-saving. The consumers are spending their wealth and there is a huge public debt and it is running on international financing. There are all kinds of financial uncertainty. So at some point consumption becomes the definition of the personality rather than the particular product and its intrinsic utility or value for the individual. So it is in that sense that beyond the point it is a hazard.
One
once again, thank you very much, sir, for your talk, and thank you very much, you good people, for attending.